Welcome to the WanderLearn podcast. I'm your host, Francis Tapon, and in this episode, I'll be interviewing Travis Pittman, who is the CEO of TourRadar. Now, look, I'm the first person to be pretty skeptical and resistant about doing any kind of tours. So I was like, you know what? I just don't do tours. It's just not me. I just do independent travel. It's not that I have anything against tours. I just don't do them. But I feel like I got to give TourRadar a chance. And I'm asking you guys to give them a chance too. And I'm glad I did, because in the end, I learned a lot. I was pretty impressed by what Travis is building up. He talks about how TourRadar actually makes money, what's errors that people make when booking a tour, what kind of recourse you have when the tour gets completely screwed up, how he actually got started, all the different avenues, all the different things he tried. And in the end, he talks about the strategic direction of where they're thinking about going. It's a pretty interesting episode, even for a tour skeptic like me. If it interested me, it might actually interest you too. So tune in and enjoy. Welcome to the WanderLearn podcast. This is Francis Tapon. I'm here with Travis Pittman, who is the CEO of TourRadar. How are you, Travis?
I'm great. Thanks a lot for having me.
Yes, great. So right now you're coming in from
Vienna in Austria.
Right. Yeah. And you started up TourRadar with your brother, who's based in Australia. That's what explains your accent, right?
Exactly right. So probably not as thicker accent as I used to have, but yeah. So I'm based here in Vienna, and Sean is based over in Brisbane in Australia still.
Okay, so a lot of people still don't know anything about TourRadar, and so I want to give them a quick overview of what TourRadar is. Like, what's the elevator pitch?
Sure. So TourRadar is a platform connecting travelers to tour operators all over the world. So we aggregate nearly 1,000 tour operators with around 30,000 different trips. And we make it easier to search, compare, and then ultimately book life-enriching experiences to basically the entire globe. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Now, before we lose some of my audience, because a lot of people know of me as an independent traveler, and a lot of people who like to listen to my podcast are independent travelers themselves. So what's in it for the independent traveler? Why should they care about TourRadar if they're like, you know what, I almost never go on tours? How do you not lose their interest?
Sure. It's actually a big preconception that it's one of the biggest things we have to fight, is that tours are bad and you have no flexibility and you're chained to this really boring group and everything like that. And I think the key message I'd like to get across is that tours have changed. Tour operators would not be around today if they haven't adapted with the requests and obviously the needs of the traveler today. So the way I'd like to pitch it is that 70% of the people who book tours with us are actually female. A lot of those are solo female travelers, so they like the security, the safety, and one of the biggest reasons is actually friends. So back in the old days when you could be an independent traveler and maybe have a lot of free time to stay at a hostel for a week or two and meet people and then go traveling with those people, it's not so much the case anymore. So Americans have very limited time off, Australians as well. So you're going in a group where you're actually then basically traveling with some like-minded people. And we feel that the itinerary that you select pre-selects the people who will be on that tour, because if you're climbing Kilimanjaro, you're not going to get someone who's maybe 90 years old and can't walk to actually who's going to go on those tours. So we like to think that the tours themselves kind of pre-select and actually get like-minded people on the trip with you. Yeah.
Now, I noticed on your website you have a section that allows, it's kind of geared toward the independent traveler, isn't there? Like tours that cater to them?
There is, yeah. So it's not a big part of what we have, but if you want to go on, say, a self-guided trip, we do have bike tours, for example, through, say, Italy or Tuscany, where you can get you get given a map and you get given a bike and you kind of have the route of where you want to go. So there's different experiences that you can do independently, but it's not really our bread and butter. It's more about the group trips where you're joining a group of anywhere between 6 people and 50 people, and that depends on the type of tour operator, the type of trip you want to do, and obviously where you're traveling as well.
Travis, what's the number one thing that a lot of people make mistakes in when they're thinking about tours and picking tours? Where do people go wrong?
I think it's around the flexibility side. Again, coming back to the preconception, is that you're chained to a group and it's like, hour for hour, you're on a bus, you're off a bus, you have no spare time. Basically, all the tour operators these days, you'll arrive in a certain city and then you'll have either a day or two to kind of do what you want. And they'll say, look, we can offer you these optional activities, which we've pre-organized. You can pay to go on those, or you can go off and do your own thing. So I think that's one area that people probably think, look, I'm going to be chained and I'm not going to actually be able to do my own thing when I get to a place. And that's just wrong. What the operators try and do is, because they're from those local areas, they try and pre-select the best experiences for that region, and then offer that, and try and get people to do those trips as well.
Now, this idea of kind of aggregating tours and becoming a one-stop shop for anybody who wants to do a tour, doesn't sound like you're the only guys doing this. And in fact, I know of one or two others at least, and there's probably even many more. How do you guys distinguish yourself from the crowd of other aggregators? I don't know if you want to call it aggregators, but consolidators or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, so I mean, you can call us an aggregator, an online travel agent, a marketplace. Depends on how you sort of think of things. We like to think of where we were one of the first movers in bringing an industry that's predominantly been done offline. So a lot of people have booked tours traditionally with offline travel agents in the high street. And what we've done is basically just digitized that and made it bookable online. And there's a few competitors out there who are more lead gen. So they're basically connecting, straight through to the tour operator, and then you're on your own to deal with the tour operator directly. The problem there, that's how we began. The problem is the experience for the customer is that the website is completely different when you go to a little operator or even a big operator. So you're kind of jumping around and there's no consistency. How do I compare apples with apples? And that's what we feel that we've been doing over the last 7 or 8 years, is actually getting that aggregation, but also how do we display that to customers in the easiest way for them to really make the best decision.
So if you're a tour operator and you want to get in on TourRadar, they have to go in there and input each one of the potential tours?
Correct, yeah. So we actually work directly with the operators. So they can either give us the information via what's called like an API, like a technical kind of integration, or they can log into our system and add it manually. But we're getting that information, the pricing, the tour itineraries, the photos, all that stuff comes directly from the tour operator. If you look at, why, or how we're different, we've tried to do that end-to-end experience from really the landing on the site, knowing nothing about a certain region or any tour operators there, right through to actually providing the customer support around any payment issues you might have or any questions you have about the tour in real time. So we have 24/7 customer support people who are on chat, they're on telephones, basically however you like to communicate with us. And then we help you basically go through the booking and go through that process. So you can pay with your local credit card, so a Visa, MasterCard, Amex, or PayPal, in your local currency. And I think that's something that hasn't really been done in this industry before, is that typically you'd request on a website of a tour operator, and then you'd have to transfer some money via a bank transfer. And then it's like, well, is this tour operator actually going to turn up? Can I trust this operator? So we're trying to put that sort of safety and security in place, that the platform and the social proof through reviews and our curation, that sort of thing, is why you'd want to come and actually book with us.
So if somebody actually takes a tour with you and afterwards they have a chance to write a review of the entire experience, and then that kind of works like eBay, for example.
Exactly, and also booking.com, where you go, you book the hotel, you actually write a review after. Also, we're a bit more in the TripAdvisor direction, where you don't have to have booked with TourRadar to have left a review. So we actually allow people who haven't booked through us to still leave a review with us, and we basically, we confirm via the email address if they're a real person. We've got checks in place for fraud, that sort of thing. So we really try and make sure that we're highlighting, real customer feedback from people who have been on these trips before at the tour level, not just at the operator level as well, because a tour operator can offer very different experiences depending on where they are.
Fair enough. And I imagine one thing, I don't know if you do it, but one thing that I think Amazon does, well, I know they do, is that they have a verified purchase badge. Yep. Do you guys do the same thing?
We don't, but it'll be something that is coming. Yeah, so we're doing some pretty big changes at the moment, and that'll be one of the things. Yeah.
Okay. And then what other things are coming down the pipe that you would like to kind of take TourRadar, and where do you guys want to go, and in what direction?
Yeah, so when I think about the marketplace, it's about selection. So it's about, can we get the biggest selection, the best selection for the travelers to know, okay, I've got a full visibility or full view of what I can do in this certain region or for this certain travel style. And that's what we're trying to do, is we're really wanting to get as many tour operators as we can who offer great experiences into the platform. And in terms of the user experience, we're really wanting to overhaul the look and feel of TourRadar. We've kind of been doing not so much on the front end, but that's going to be a big change we're going to be doing. So making it easier to discover things, to make our search and discovery side of things better, and mobile. So obviously everyone's using mobile these days. They're starting on the bus home from work, researching, that sort of thing. And our mobile is okay, but we want to make it even better, but also do a mobile app. So we've been humming and hawing, do we do one, do we not? And we finally worked out, what is the path we want to take. So hopefully in the first half of next year, we should start to see a mobile app come out on our side.
So 2019, you'll around maybe June or so. By then, there should be a mobile app.
That's correct. Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's certainly, because some people, I imagine they're running around Europe, and then all of a sudden they say, you know what, let's go to Switzerland, and like, oh shit, we'd like to take a tour through the Alps or something like that, and then they do it spontaneously, and they haven't lugged their laptop, and they don't want to go into a cyber cafe. But they got Wi-Fi, because Wi-Fi is all over Europe, so boom, they would want to do it on their app. To me, that's definitely a high priority thing.
Exactly,
for the traveler.
And we've been investing a lot into content. So a lot of video content being created by sending people on tours, getting really high quality stuff, and by professional videographers, bringing that back in and actually creating really nice documentaries or shorter videos, that sort of thing, as well as great written content. And we feel that the mobile app will be a nice way of highlighting some of that stuff and inspiring people to if you're in Switzerland, what are the things or what are the areas of Switzerland you should actually go and do, and then obviously find some trips around that actually makes sense.
So how, Travis, does the algorithm work, search algorithm work? So if I'm in there, I'm typing in Nebraska, for example, how do you guys determine, or maybe not Nebraska, let's pick something a little bit more competitive.
Bit like, more higher up, yeah. So,
like Las Vegas or Paris. How about that? That's the absolute pinnacle. So I type in Paris. How do you determine all the different tour operators, the tour options? There's a trillion.
Yeah, there is. And so the way I would say is that we actually don't target the people going at city level. So that's more like your Viator with TripAdvisor, even Get Your Guide. We aim to go one level up, which is region. So let's take Tuscany or even a country, so Croatia. Because people say, look, I'd love to go to Croatia, but I actually don't know what there is to see there, where I can go, what I can do. So people type in Croatia, for example, and then we surface based on where you're located and through a bunch of other things that I don't understand. The tech guys, obviously the ones doing all that. But things like reviews and how many photos they've got and things like that are super important, because it's about the user experience. Can we give the customer as much information as possible about that tour so that the person can make a decision to buy without having to reach out to us, without having to pick up the phone? They can kind of self-serve and actually say, look, this has got all the things I need. I've had all my questions answered, and now I want to go ahead and book it. Got it.
Okay. And so what's curious is that if somebody wants to drill down onto the city level, is it possible, let's say I say, I want a tour of the Louvre in Paris, the museum. Is that not going to pop up?
No. Unfortunately not. Yeah.
Really?
So
really?
We've found our niche, and that's what anything below 3 days we pretty much don't touch. So that's the way we differentiate ourselves between the other types of marketplaces out there.
Okay, well, that's an important point to make, because when I think tours, a lot of times I think of these half-day tours, one-day tours, that kind of stuff, not just the one-week tour up Mount Everest.
Correct, yeah. So the sweet spot for us is around 12 days, 12 to 14 days are the trip lengths that are being booked. But it depends on the destination. So if it's a destination which requires shorter trips, it could be 5 to 8 days, the trip length. But yeah, typically it's anything below 3 days, we don't really sell on the platform.
Okay, so, but then going back to the same question in a different way. So then if I pick Italy, how do you distinguish from all the different Italian tours? Because you got to mix in Sardinia with Sicily, with Tuscany.
Yeah.
there's so many regions just in Italy, and you can easily spend a week in any one of those regions.
Exactly, and I think that's up to us on the usability side to highlight what are the ways you can dig down into deeper levels. So if it's Sardinia or if it's Tuscany, or through the filters we have on the side or at the top of the page, you can actually start to drill down, and that's what's really useful, is that you go from 500 tours in Italy down to selecting about 4 or 5 different filters, and you can come out with 3 trips that actually match your profile. And that's the benefit of the technology. And you see that on booking.com, and you see that on Trivago and those types of sites as well, is that you can get really granular in your preferences. And that's what we want to get to as well. And that's why we ask our tour operators to give us basically everything they can about their trips, so that it really is possible for someone to drill down and find something exactly for them.
Can somebody do like an advertising or sponsored thing so that they can turn up top of the results, kind of like Google? When you type in Google, the Google ads pop up because people have paid for that.
Yeah, no, so in terms of our algorithm, it's not a pay-to-play type thing, so we don't rank on commission rates or anything like that.
No,
we do it whatever. But in terms of advertising, what you mean? No, we don't have anything like that. Who knows, maybe down the line we'll have a very explicit something there for, like Google do, but at this stage we don't have any plans for it.
Because to me that seems like a obvious revenue stream for you to just charge some fee just like Google Ads does, and then you display prominently this is a sponsored ad or whatever, sponsored results, so that whenever anybody types in Italy, I want my tour to pop up at the top, and then they're paying TourRadar for that privilege.
Yep, they're things that we could consider in the future, but for the moment it's not.
So
really
Travis, how do you guys make money? How does TourRadar make money?
Yeah, that's a nice thing. We're no different to traditional travel agents. So we take a commission upon sale.
What kind of commission are you talking about?
It's anywhere from 15 to 20% typically.
Okay.
So yeah, it depends on the operator and the style of trips, that sort of thing. But yeah, industry average I think is around 20%. I think in some you're paying 25 to 30, especially as you get down to lower sort of value tours. But yeah, it's not something, we don't mark up the trips to put that fat in there. The tour operators in the past have had to always get distribution through traditional travel agents, so they've built the commission into their model. So it's not like there's another link in the chain or anything like that. We're just basically taking something that was done offline and bringing the process online.
Okay. And what are some advices that you would give travelers who are thinking about booking tours, either through TourRadar or just general advice that you've done? Because obviously you've probably been on 1 or 2 tours. So what kind of advice would you give people that I think some people overlook?
I would say, leverage the granularity that we provide. So you can really get down to, do you want it to be active? Do you want it to be, more cultural? So you really kind of pull out what are the things that are really important to you. If you're more of a budget traveler, then you might actually want to, be more cost conscious, but we also have really high-end stuff. So, for example, we onboarded river cruising in the last 18 months or so, and that's 5-star experiences that we have on there. So, you've got trips there worth $50,000, $60,000 for one person, which is just crazy. But it's all about what is your taste and what do you want. It's looking at the itinerary, and it's also looking at what are the optional activities I can do on that trip, because I think you probably again coming back to when you think about a tour, you think I'm just doing what the itinerary says and that's it. but typically every single operator has a huge list of optional activities that you can do on that trip that you basically can select whilst you're on the tour. So you typically can't book those because the tour guide will say, look, because maybe the rafting trip's not running that day because the water's too high or something like that. So when you're kind of coming into the next destination, the guide will say to the group, look, in the next place in Innsbruck, for example, we have a rafting trip, we have a hot air ballooning trip, or you can do nothing and just take the day off and do your own thing. So it's kind of asking or looking for the information of what are the other cool things that I'm actually going to do on that trip would be probably the advice I'd say. Yeah.
Excellent. And Travis, what about any kind of guarantees you give to the customer regarding the success or the execution of the tour? Because let's face it, some tour operators don't execute very well.
Sure.
So what recourse does the customer have?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, we're a marketplace. The contract exists between the tour operator and the customer directly, but we're here. That's why we're here. That's why we have 24/7. That's why if anything goes wrong, we're here to support where we can. Typically, when the customer is on the tour, they have a higher chance of getting something sorted, dealing directly with either the guide or the company itself. If they're really not getting anywhere and just banging their head against the wall or are completely disappointed in what's happening, they can call us and then we'll try and go, raise it up or escalate it if need be. Typically, we don't have to do that. But we're there to mediate and to obviously make the customer happy that they get the best experience. So yeah, where the 24/7 thing is a big factor because a lot of times a tour operator, like the head office, might only be open from 9 to 5. So we try and obviously jump in and help understand the situation, and maybe we can resolve it on our side first. If not, we then try and work out how do we take that to the tour operator and keep the customer happy.
Excellent. Okay, so now I want to shift gears a little bit, Travis. I want to talk about how
Sure.
you and your brother started this. Now, one thing
Sure.
I'll note is that I've traveled to about 120 countries, and every time I meet an Australian on the road, they've always been out for like at least 3 months, if not 6 months. Or just like I've never met an Australian who says like I'm on a 1 week or 2 week vacation. Never.
Yeah.
It's always at least 2-3 months. So I imagine you kind of got this travel bug in you, as many Aussies do. So tell us a little bit about how you guys started up TourRadar.
Yeah, it's I'm 14 years into my 2-year working holiday visa. So basically, I left Australia in 2003, and it was for a 2-year working holiday visa in London. And Sean, my brother and co-founder, he was living in London already. Basically, it was like, it's great over here. You can earn decent money. You can travel. You can see the world, which, a lot of Aussies, we're stuck on our island and we don't really get to see much of the world from there. So we like to get away from it. Hence why you meet a lot traveling. But yeah, we started out something actually in 2004, which was the predecessor to TourRadar. And funny that you say travel bug, because the name of the site that we created was called bugbitten.com.
Okay.
So it was to be bitten by the travel bug.
Yeah.
And it was basically Facebook for travel. So back in 2004, we were the photo sharing platform for all the expats living in London. So a lot of them had no Facebook back then. So they used us to share their drunken photos in London, but then also their travel photos whilst they were actually, tripping around Europe or Africa. And so we were super successful. We had like 20,000 photos a day being uploaded back then, which was crazy, like no one was really doing that. Problem was social media just didn't exist. No one knew what it was. And so we saw Facebook coming as well. My brother's the finance guy, so he was like, well, we can't just keep burning cash on servers and whatever else. We need to have a business model of some description. And so that's when we pivoted to actually the tour related side, because we saw booking.com, we saw Expedia, Skyscanner, for example, all doing this, shifting a certain part of the travel industry online. And we saw there was no one doing it for tours. And we were doing those trips, so we thought, why not give it a go? And then we overlaid the user-generated content from all of those trips that we were tagging, from these travelers onto the platform as well. So that was kind of the very early days. Along the way, we tried way too many business models to get us to here, but then eventually worked out that the model that has been in place for the last 50 or 100 years, in terms of taking a commission for a sale, was the one that we should have probably gone with in the beginning. So, but you learn by trialing all these things.
Sure. And you also have, 3 rounds of venture capital?
Actually, quite a few more. There's about 5 or 6. So
Wow.
we've had a few smaller ones in there, but 3 considerable ones. So we say Series A, Series B, and Series C. So the Series A was a $6 million round. Our Series B was a $10 million round, and the latest one was a $50 million round. So, which was a nice justification from a Silicon Valley VC like TCV, who was invested into the likes of Expedia and Airbnb and HomeAway, companies like that. B2C travel companies. That they have the belief that we can also become potentially one of those kind of global players in the travel market online. Yeah.
And so what would be then a potential, a lot of people don't care about this, but I've got that business background,
Yeah.
like the exit strategy, in other words, just potentially a potential acquisition by one of these, like Expedia could theoretically acquire you.
There are acquisition potentials. So obviously we've still got a lot of things to prove. I think that's why no one's really jumped into this space. It's very complex. There's a lot of moving parts with you've got to connect the dots of the transport, the accommodation, the guides, the food. So it's not just a simple click and book a hotel. There's a lot of different things involved, and also getting that content. It's a very fragmented supply base.
Yeah.
So basically, we've been trying to get that stuff done. So we've got to prove a lot of things before we get to that sort of point. But with the funding we took, we now have the option to go our own path of whichever way we want to go. So we just plan on keep building, keep executing, and then we'll see what happens along the way. So which direction we get taken. But for now, it's the first time we've had the chance to really just focus on the product and the business itself, and that's what we're doing. And I'm sure opportunities will come up along the way, and we'll start to work those things out down the line. Yeah.
If I gave you $10 million right now, Trav, and I say, okay, spend this to build the business, how much of that $10 million would you spend on finding and getting more tour operators, convincing them to say, hey, put your tours on TourRadar, versus how much money would you spend looking for regular travelers to book on TourRadars? In other words, what's your emphasis on the supply or the demand?
Yep. Great question, because a marketplace is all about supply and demand. So you can't have one without the other. And I think that's what we began. We started out on the supply side, built it up, then realized, hey, we had no demand. So we weren't actually getting any bookings for those suppliers, and then they weren't so happy. So we've spent time on the demand side. Now we're at a nice kind of equilibrium where we want to start building that at the same kind of rate. So we are investing very heavily. So take the $10 million thing, we'd probably invest 20-30% into supply, 20, 30, maybe 40% into the demand side, and then people. You need the technology to actually build the platform and scale, because as soon as you can have the right engineers and the right product managers and stuff like that, you can start to build great products that reduce the friction for the traveler, and also the tour operators. So, and that's a key part of the whole marketplace. You've got demand, supply, and then the platform in the middle. So yeah, it's kind of balancing those things out.
So I also wanted to get from you, Trav, a good splash of cold water on the face of anybody who says, you know what, I want to get into the travel industry. I'm so passionate about travel. Splash some cold water in their face and say, you know what, think this one through, because they're imagining they're going to spend their days at the Four Seasons, and they're going to go to Vienna, and they're going to go to whatever, the nice, Tokyo or whatever. But this notion, I imagine, is more fairy tale than it is the reality. Tell us a little bit about the hardcore reality of running a travel business.
Yeah, I think you talk to anyone in the travel industry and they're all like, why would anyone ever want to do that? Like, it's razor thin margins, and it's hard, and you've got customers to deal with, and so it's not easy. But I think the thing that we love about it is that our mission is to connect people to life enriching travel experiences. And that's great for people coming to work every day, is that they're actually doing something that's making the world a better place. It's getting people to travel, it's getting them to meet other cultures, to be, exposed to other things. And whereas you're not coming to work and actually, selling widgets or something like that. And so that's a really important part, which I think is the benefit of the travel industry. But it's not easy. It definitely, is not there's not some not fun jobs that you need to do to actually make the entire process work. So, and in terms of, jumping into this space or jumping into online travel and being an entrepreneur, there's been a lot of graveyards, and a lot of funding and a lot of money that's come into this space, just generally in online travel. And I think social travel planning would be probably one of the biggest space that has the most graveyards. And it's not easy to make money in this area. So affiliate programs, there's not enough revenue there, to sustain a business out of an affiliate program, unless you're in a very targeted niche, and then you can actually leverage that. It's not easy, but it's also super challenging. And the thing I love about it is that even though I can't travel and do all these things, when I'm browsing through and seeing Costa Rica or Sri Lanka or whatever on the site, it's just bucket lists, continue to get longer and longer. And I mean, I saw your, bio was that you want to travel the world, and I'm bloody jealous that you've done over 100 countries already. So I think I'm only at like 50 or something like that. Yeah, there's not enough time to travel and too many things to do at the moment. So.
Yeah, no, it's true. But Australians are certainly the kings of the travel. So I'm hopeful for your future there, for being able to finally travel and get out. What is any other words of wisdom that you would give to people who are considering getting a tour? Any other things that you would say, okay, look out for this or watch out for that we might have missed?
I think I touched on it slightly. One thing that is probably underrated and probably not really understood completely is the friendship factor. So pretty much every single person you talk to who's done a tour has one or two people that they met on that tour that they're still in contact with. Yeah. Typically it could be 5 to 10. I know Sean, my brother, he went on a Kentucky tour back in the day, around Europe. This is probably 25 years ago or 20 years ago now, and he's still in touch with 2 or 3 of those. And so I think that's the thing that's underestimated, that the people you'll meet, and it's just in travel in general, that you'll meet people on that tour. But the cool thing about it, we see it, in Facebook groups and also in reviews and stuff like that we see, is that people say, I did this tour with these 5 people, and now next year we've already booked onto Croatia or Costa Rica or something like that, with the same people on a different group because they had such a good time. So I think the friendship side is something that's probably underrated, and to really just think about that and to just take the leap of faith as well. If you've got time off, you've got cash, and none of your friends do, just do it. That's the purpose of a tour. It makes it easy. Yeah.
Right. No, that's certainly true. And I think that's a lot of people when they go to Europe, especially because Europe is so rich when it comes to monuments and physical objects and churches and things to look at, that sometimes we forget about the human element of, let's say, either meeting a local or meeting somebody in your tour and actually connecting with them, because in the end, a lot of those can be the richest travel experiences.
Absolutely.
of all. Are you getting involved at all in Africa? Because I just came back from 54 African countries. I imagine in some ways, Africa seems like a perfect place because so many people are concerned and worried about Africa that they want to have a handheld tour. On the other hand, there's a lot of countries in Africa like Chad or Guinea-Bissau that are really not tourist oriented.
Yep. I think Africa's a great example of a place you'd want to do a tour, because your safety, sometimes you're not sure. I mean, you're probably a bit on the more adventurous side, but there's people who, aren't so keen to get out of their comfort zones, and to have someone kind of holding your hand and knowing how you're getting from A to B and how you do this border crossing and what you should and shouldn't do or say or that sort of thing. That's the purpose of a tour. And so Africa, for sure, we have it on the platform. It's not one of our biggest sellers because it is a little bit more adventurous. So Europe definitely is that kind of easier step for people to take when they want to go traveling, because a lot of our customers are Australians and Americans. So to go to that next step of Africa, it's it's a bit more. But yeah, we're definitely doing more and more into that area. So overland trucks, safaris, that sort of thing. The area that we don't really do so much yet, and that could change in the future, is on the tailor-made side. So if you come to us and you really want us to put together a completely custom experience, it's not something we do today. We'll probably eventually have a team that will look after those sort of things, but we're more about getting people onto these experiences that probably meets 90% of what you actually want to do anyway, but costs you 40% less.
Right.
And you got the benefit of traveling with someone else, but if it's your honeymoon, you may not want to actually do a group experience. So, and I think there's quite a few trips in Africa which are kind of the honeymoon type trips, or maybe dedicated family type trips. So yeah, it's not a huge thing for us, but it's something we're going to grow into. Yeah.
Excellent. So everybody wants to go to TourRadar.com. That's with 2 R's.
Yes. Yep.
Actually, no, there's really 3 R's in the name.
Yeah, at the end, yeah. Exactly. In the middle, there's 2 R's, yeah.
Right. Okay, great. Travis, any last words of wisdom before we go?
No, really, I think it's about getting out of your comfort zone. I think so many people are just stuck in the kind of, rat race of their jobs, and I think they think travel to an exotic place is really hard. And that's what I love about tours, is that it's basically travel simplified. So you could pretty much book a tour to Vietnam or anywhere in the world and not do a single bit of research.
Right.
Literally jump on a plane, turn up, you're traveling with a local guide, you're doing all the local things. So you don't need to do this massive amount of research. And that's the thing I love about tours, and that's something that we really want to push and show people, that you can literally kind of click, book, go, and not really think about it and still experience, some pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, and I think also to remind people that tours are not always super highly structured. Some of them are, but
correct. Yeah.
I think sometimes it can be a marriage saver, because maybe one spouse wants to have the structured tour and the other one wants to be the independent traveler, and then you can actually do both when you book a tour. In other words, you're not always in this highly structured event. But I think what I always tell people, because frankly, a lot of independent travelers are extremely snobby, and it pisses me off, because to me, yeah, I've been to a lot of places independently, but that doesn't make me better. They look sometimes down at the tour thing. I'm like, I always tell people, get out of the house.
Yep.
That's
exactly.
all I ask. And I don't care if you walked one block to a block that you've never been to, or you go to Zimbabwe. What matters is get out of the house. That's the most important thing. So
exactly.
And
just on that point, where you mentioned about the marriage saver thing, we've had quite a bit of feedback from people where they say the thing they really like about the tour is that the husband or the wife might not actually be someone who likes to socialize or go drinking or go out and party or whatever it is, and another one might be a bookworm or who loves to watch movies or whatever. So at night times, they actually find it's great, because one can go off and do the thing they want to do, and the other one can just sit at home or sit in the hotel room, relax, take a bath, whatever it is, and it actually works quite well in that way. So we've had some instances where not save marriages, but it definitely has made the traveling a little bit more fun, and everyone feels satisfied by it. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so thank you so much, Travis, and
No
I
problem.
wish you the best of luck at Tour Radar, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much, Francis.
We look forward to the app in mid-2019. We'll be looking forward.
The product and engineering team have no pressure now.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers. Yeah.
And that concludes this episode of the WanderLearn podcast, where we explore travel technology and transformation. If you'd like to see the show notes with links to what we talked about, or if you'd like to comment on the show, or if you'd like to ask me a question, then go to WanderLearn.com and click on the latest episode. If you'd like to connect with me, just remember Tapon. That's my first initial and my last name. Tapon is the username I use on all social media. You can also get to my website by going to ftapon.com. Here's one last reason to remember Tapon. If you like what I do and want to get rewarded for supporting my projects, then go to patreon.com/ yep, you guessed it, ftapon. That's where you can pick up some sweet rewards for as little as $1 a month. And remember, subscribing to the WanderLearn podcast helps, but downloading each episode helps even more. Please share the podcast, review it, and sign up for my newsletter at WanderLearn.com. This show was edited by Rejoice Tapon. The music was composed by Eric Stratman. This is Francis Tapon, encouraging you to wander and learn.